Drinking from the skulls, well, that is one thing, but those he had used to relieve himself, he would then just use them to drink from, too. Yeah, that was too much for me. It's just not sanitary.
No, this plane didn't crash.
An ancient troll. They apparently wipe their butts using leaves.
Did you see that, Zach? Clear as a crisp spring morning. F.K. in the coffee. I knew I could count on it. Never fails.
Why?
This is the Missing J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories, a game by Swery65, and a game that taught me a little something about myself.
デッドリプリモーション一緒にやってシナリオやってもらって取材に行くわけですよ、アメリカに。で取材はもちろんお金出しますけどホテル代出したんですよ。
Enjoying a nice evening drink with his friends Kenji Igura and Manami Matsumae, here is Hidetaka Suihiro, though you and I will mostly know him by his pseudonym Swery65 or just Swery. Swery is a Japanese video game director, designer, and writer, and if you don't know any of his games, that is probably because they are an intensely weird mix of comedy and horror, in what I like to call a Japanese video game fusion of a David Lynch and an Edgar Wright film. This is of course best exemplified by his first big hit, Deadly Premonition, a Twin Peak-esque open-world detective game with uncanny comedy scenes, stealth, horror, shooter gameplay, both modern survival and classic adventure elements, as well as quick-time events. You get the picture, it has a weird vibe overall, but one that is undeniably fascinating. And while games such as Deadly Premonition are seemingly inspired by the likes of Twin Peaks, Swery has gone on record to say that despite such influences, most of his inspiration is drawn instead from experiences in his own life. Nonetheless, it seems that this inspiration manifests usually in the art of the weird, the absurd, and at least in the case of games such as Deadly Premonition and the 4 Dark Dreams Don't Die, the entertaining. Yet these games have found their cult following. In an ocean of the ever-same games being released year after year, it seems Swery found himself a nice little pebble in the ocean, on which he can exist alongside the next big action blockbuster or cinematic narrative experience. It was all the more surprising when his 2018 game, a puzzle platformer by the name The Missing J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories, which we shall just call The Missing from here on out, opened with this screen. From the moment you start The Missing, it seems as if there is something of more substance here, at least more so than in Swery's previous games. The Missing wants to convey something, a message perhaps, or a moral, or maybe a more profound, different type of experience, and naturally you would expect that it behaves accordingly, filled with all the conventions that other narratives who wish to convey some sort of message are usually filled with. But then the game opens and it is as strange as ever.
Memoria Island. A remote island in North America, just off the coast of Maine. Filled with artifacts left over from the good old days, this island has the power to awaken the formative memories of all its visitors. The island's ancient inhabitants called it a Lapo Grimo, which means place to find the lost in their long-forgotten language.
The Missing follows titular character J.J. Macfield, a university student who goes camping with her friend Emily on an island off the American coast. It begins with a strange intro that captures the feeling of a low-budget horror film, in which a man narrates the island's history over real-world photographs, some seemingly from the island itself, others straight out of the aforementioned horror flick. Both the narration and the photographs can only really be described as mysterious and dark, perhaps to the uncanny extreme. Think it was a dark and stormy night. And I would rather not use such cliched words, but that is really what it is, dark and mysterious. Then we see JJ and Emily spend a romantic evening together, looking out over the sea and to the stars, even sharing a kiss in the end. They go to sleep, yet at night JJ is woken up by a distorted voice, only to find out that Emily is missing. When she goes looking for her and is eventually struck by lightning on an open field and dies, she is resurrected by yet another offbeat character. A doctor wearing a moose mask, or perhaps a moose that became a doctor. It's weird either way. In a grotesque turn of events, she finds out that she cannot die, that she is destined to suffer the pain of death over and over again. That is, until she reaches Emily. What follows is JJ's journey to find her girlfriend, and I could talk at length here about some of the strange things she happens across on the island, but the scissor monster, the murder baby, and the giant symbol monkey, I think, suffice for now. Where at first I may have thought that this game would be, at least in how it presents itself, more serious, I would now understand that it is a sweary game after all. The dreamlike qualities that portray in his other games are also present here, be it the offbeat voice acting, the strange animations, rough controls, weird art style, or even the sometimes surreal, idiosyncratic writing, mixing absurd horror with everyday discussions about why JJ's industrial design professor likes Star Wars so much. And on a first glance, it seems that this is maybe all that The Missing is, a little dreamlike game without much substance, despite perhaps pretending to have some. It seems, if anything, like something went wrong during development, that maybe it was made on a low budget, or perhaps the choice of voice actors or animators was suboptimal, that ultimately The Missing is just a big mess of a lot of concepts and ideas coming together to create one big experience that is often at odds with itself. Yet, as I progressed with the game, all these little nuisances began to blend into the background. The animations started to feel more vicious, JJ's cries of pain or pleas for help, in their pure rawness sent chills down my spine. The writing felt reminiscent of the ambivalence my own thoughts and feelings sometimes have in real life, where existential dread about death switches in an instant with a trivial discussion about what the ontological qualities of pizza are. It became, in a sense, a radical experience. It was no longer just dreamlike, but instead perhaps more vivid than anything else I had ever played. It presented the ambivalence that I had felt in my life purer and rawer than any game had ever done. Perhaps this is precisely because this game does not feel like it wants to sell as many copies as possible. Perhaps because it is not calculated from top to bottom to appeal to the common denominator. Or perhaps because it felt like just in that moment I too was, and still am, going through the same problems JJ went through. My emotions and feelings towards my identity too were in conflict with one another. Felt like a whirlwind at one point, then a calm sea at another. Never really connected, always an incomplete puzzle. In one moment, JJ's in excruciating pain, her hat torn off her shoulders, and yet in the other, she walks through serene woods, moonlight shining overhead, reading old messages on her phone, as if the world had come to a standstill. Then, on top of an old clock tower, she finds Emily. She reaches up the last steps to the roof, and as she does so, her anxiety, but her determination to present a last hurrah, crescendoing in pure relief. She went through all this pain, through all this suffering, but in the end it would be worth it. She would be reunited with the person she loved, for whom she went through hell over and over again, despite her hurtful comments, her accusations. She would rejoice at knowing that she would wake up from this nightmare, that it would be over, that she could forget about it, return home, breathe again, and then she reaches her. Emily is right there, hanging from a steel beam, dead. And as all hope leaves her, J.J. too hangs herself. The game could have ended right here, and maybe 20 years down the line, people would call it a masterpiece. Brave and courageous for it to be so blunt about a topic such as suicide. A piece of harrowing social commentary on the lived experiences of people such as JJ. But Swery is not bleak, and he is far from hopeless. What follows is a sequence of events essentially about hope. JJ does not die, she is unable to after all, and instead all the hatred she feels for her mother who did not understand her, for her friends who used her, for everyone else who mocked her, and lastly for herself too, who could not overcome her own crisis, manifests into an abomination of anger and hatred. In the end, it seems she even kills Emily herself, who would, until the last moment, not give up on her. And then, with the world around her gone to black, she thinks it is over, that there is no longer anyone she can hurt, that she is finally dead. But, as Swery reminds us, this story is not bleak. It is not about death, that it is, instead, about regeneration, about life itself. In perhaps as cliched a way as possible, JJ beats the monster she has created from her own hatred, reunites with Emily, and then realizes that it was all an end-of-life dream she had, after trying to kill herself. As JJ wakes up in the real world, having found in the world of dreams what she was looking for, she embraces Emily, promising to never let her go, and even forgives her mother. And yes, I know this all sounds very tropey and like you've seen this all a million times already, but the structure of the story is really not what I think is important here, but rather the experience itself. It does not devalue, as many other narratives do, what came before. The pain that JJ went through, the suffering she experienced, but also the love she feels for Emily, the gratitude she has for her, and even the understanding and forgiveness she can find in her heart for her mother, all lead to who she is, to who she identifies as. It is no longer things split apart from one another. No longer is her identity as a woman separate from her experience in life, from her anxiety in her mind, from the people she loves, or the sorrow and happiness that keep tugging at her heart. These feelings, these emotions, are a part of her life. They are, in their entirety, quintessential for her being. She sees life, be it sorrow, love, anger, anxiety, hope, or anything else, no longer as separate issues, but rather embraces them as a single whole. As Swery himself says, all of the elements were unified, rather than conceived out of whim or coincidence. Life becomes, in its entirety, experience.
Yeah. I love you too.
JJ!
Emily.
You idiot!
Emily, that hurts.
Shut up! I was worried to death! I thought you were gone forever.
Emily, I had a strange dream. You were in it too.
A bad dream?
Yeah, but I needed it. It helped me find what I was looking for. Emily, thank you for always supporting me. I think I finally understand who I am now. I'll never leave you again.
JJ! Me neither.
Emily, I told you. That hurts.
Shut up! No more talking.
Shortly after playing this game, I had an experience involving a lot of alcohol, leading to a night in which I, perhaps for the first time in my life, felt that I had hit rock bottom. And weirdly, as I was laying on my apartment floor, curled up into a ball, sobbing and, quite frankly, puking out my insides, my mind kept wandering back to this game. It made me understand that life is an experience, in all its parts, that deciding against embracing this core idea is the same as death, which, leading to the end of experience in all forms, is then the antithesis of experience. Perhaps it is because I'm currently going through similar feelings as JJ, or perhaps it is just for entirely subjective reasons that I can't possibly reproduce in a text or a video, but this game emotionally reached me somewhere that simply no other game has managed to in a long, long time. I can enjoy the greats of the greats, the giant AAA titles with their expansively produced set pieces, their expanding narratives and beautiful visuals, but in the end, they always tell something that is so far removed from what I feel. They are preoccupied with all of these things that make a story-driven game great when picking it apart in 1,000 different ways, but none of them ever seem to stand a chance of pure raw emotion for me. Animations are sometimes clunky in this game, yes, but they feel real. Every single one of them. When JJ burns, I can feel it. When she breaks a bone from the first to the 100th time, I can feel it. And when she's hopeless, crying, believing that she is worthless, I can feel that too. I assume it is paradoxical that I would like something that sometimes feels like it was produced on a shoestring budget, even if it wasn't. But damn it, it might just be what makes this game so great. Every hour, every minute is filled to the brim with the love and devotion of people who truly wanted to create something they emotionally believe in. I can only compare it favorably to some of the greatest experiences I have ever had in video games, and I will gladly add the final hour of the Missing J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories to the likes of Shadow of the Colossus' final boss or the Ascension and Journey, all of them experiences that are deeply emotional, impenetrable by literary jargon or scientific analysis. I said at the beginning of this video that this game taught me something about myself, and I guess I'm now ready to say that my name is Dorothea. And even if I do not yet know who I truly am, I at least know that whenever I feel lost in the search of mine, that whichever harmful shadow I create of myself, that I can beat myself, neither alone nor only with the help of those around me, but rather with all elements that encompass my life, my experience. This video was more than a year in the making, so thank you for watching. But most importantly, thank you, Swery. Thank you for making me understand a little bit more about myself, for making me realize that the pain and the emotions I am feeling are a part of me, and that I can recover from them, that I do not have to live a life that often feels meaningless from dawn to sunset. Thank you for making me experience these emotions that I would not find anywhere else. But most importantly, thank you for this. Maybe summing up this entire video in one short sentence. This game was made with the belief that nobody is wrong for being what they are. Keep pouring your heart out, you wonderful man, and gladly make me shed tears again. So few things do these days.
A way to understand all the things that I'm